Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this first episode of the Birds on a Wire podcast. A podcast devoted solely to an in-depth look at the St. Louis Cardinal baseball team. Everything that the fans want to talk about, we want to talk about too. So thanks for joining us. This podcast is brought to you by the Phantom Mentor Content Engine, bringing you content that no one ever saw coming. Let's go to the first episode.
I'm your host, Colin Suhre, alongside Josh Bobinet. And Josh, it is like getting ready for Christmas morning here in St. Louis, a town that cares so deeply about their St. Louis Cardinals. What are your feelings heading into opening day?
You know, I always get excited. It means a lot of things to me. One of the things it means to me is that spring is actually here and this friggin' winter is fucking over finally, you know what I mean? Because the greatest thing about St. Louis is that the Cardinals do announce springtime, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And so now we're going to talk a lot about whether I'm excited about the team, but I'm excited about the weather. I can guarantee you that, you know? So.
Well, certainly at least some intrigue with this team with some of the trades with Paul Goldschmidt, signing a key free agent and Andrew Miller, a lot of exciting new pieces on this Cardinals roster, and of course retaining a lot of guys, signing that extension for Goldschmidt, keeping a guy like him around, and then of course building on that core that they already have of good guys in the middle of that lineup, Matt Carpenter, Paul DeJong, Marcell Ozuna, of course the steady Eddie, Yadier Molina behind the plate, and then the pitching is so exciting.
The pitching is great. I think that I'm really excited because it really does. Having a guy like Goldschmidt really gives us this opportunity to see how good those guys really are. I think we've been operating with a bunch of guys that are good, right? They haven't been good enough, obviously, right, to get us over the hump. But now a guy comes in who's a legitimate perennial all-star and a legitimate top 5 in the league hitter, right? Or potentially. I mean, you can argue exactly the number, but
he's consistently up there every year, and that's the thing you have to love about him.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's of course, you talk about the addition of Paul Goldschmidt, and everyone talks about a lot of times when you add that big bullpen arm, maybe a closer, not only does it help out that back end of the bullpen, but now everyone gets pushed to a role of less significance, and now they can kind of shine a little bit more wherever they get pushed. Well, you're going to see that same kind of effect as you alluded to with this lineup. When you put a Paul Goldschmidt in the middle there, now all of a sudden Paul DeJong hitting behind Goldschmidt is going to see all kinds of pitches. With Ozuna in front of him, he's going to have guys on base, and Carpenter and Goldschmidt leading off that lineup, really setting the table for him and the rest of those players in the middle of the lineup to do great things.
Well, let's start at the top, okay? How do you feel about the idea that Chris Carpenter has to bat leadoff?
Matt Carpenter. So
did I say Chris Carpenter?
Hey, it's Freudian slip.
Matt
Freudian
Carpenter.
slip.
I miss Chris Carpenter, by the way. Matt Carpenter. The fact that he has to bat first, right?
Yes.
I agree. He has to.
Yes.
The numbers don't allow him to bat anywhere else in that lineup. Mm-hmm. Although he has no wheels. Couldn't steal a base if they moved it to 20 feet from first, right?
Yep.
But he has to bat up there, and his at bats are 10 times better out of the leadoff spot. But if he didn't have to, this lineup would be a different lineup if he didn't have to bat first.
Well, certainly it's interesting, and I think with the addition of Paul Goldschmidt, it almost does kind of for the first time make sense to have a Matt Carpenter up at the top of the lineup leading off. I would just say because now you have that legitimate two-hole hitter. The big thing for me was I always wanted Matt Carpenter in that 2 spot, the game moving more towards putting your best hitter in that 2 spot. And not only that, I think it kind of gets overlooked. We talk a lot about the number 2 hitter being the best hitter with this new school approach. Right. But the real reason you want that number 2 hitter to be your best hitter, you're looking at it from an on-base standpoint. And we all know that Matt Carpenter is an on-base monster. He just fits that role perfectly. And now that you have a guy that kind of almost parallels and brings a little bit more of the average and situational hitting to the table as well, in a Paul Goldschmidt, it really kind of relieves that pressure of wanting to move Matt Carpenter around, and he kind of naturally fits into that role, I think, better this year.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're going to, have a guy who hits 30 home runs out of the leadoff spot and can't run, then you have to take on that new school of thinking where the number 2 hitter is your RBI guy.
Yeah.
You have to because you can't move Matt Carpenter out of the lineup, and you can't move him out of the first hole. So he upset me for a while there, okay? Because I felt like square peg and round hole situation was actually bringing down the team.
Yep.
And when we traded Matt Adams, I lost it. I was like, oh my God, right? And then he goes off to the other teams and just rakes, right?
Yeah, kind of similar to a Luke Voigt.
Oh my God. Watching that kid hit. Oh my God.
Too bad we're not in the American League, huh?
No, it just feels like we've mismanaged our team, our prospects, to fit this square peg into the leadoff spot.
That's fair.
But then he goes out last year and he rakes.
Yep.
And then Adams gets a chance to come back and doesn't do jack shit.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So I'm just literally looking at Matt Adams while he's striking out towards the end of the season. I'm like, dude, honestly. You go off to the Braves and you frickin' rake. You go to the Nationals and you frickin' rake.
Yep.
And then you get the call back here, and I don't know what happens, but it's like his ass puckered up the size of a frickin' needle, man. He couldn't hit anything, you know what I mean?
Right, and I think it's a multitude of factors from that standpoint. Maybe a little bit of pressure coming back to your former team in the hunt for the playoff race.
Yeah.
That's certainly a little bit of added pressure. But then also, look at those places. The Braves' new ballpark is a bandbox. Guys are hitting bombs out of there like nothing. And then you look at where the Nationals play, that right field porch is real short. I understand the wall's a little bit taller in right field there, but still just real short. And you saw Bryce Harper just jacking bombs out that way all day.
Yeah. I mean, but there's a big difference between hitting balls over a short porch like Adams was doing in those two ballparks, and then being in St. Louis and not be able to hit at all. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like,
of course.
So it's one thing to hit bloopers all day while you're in St. Louis, and then go there and hit home runs in a smaller park, but you're still jacking them out. And then occasionally Adams, when he gets a hold of one, he proves that he has big time major league power. So anyway, I'm getting off track, but I think that ultimately I was bummed out that our team had been shifted in so many different directions to kind of fulfill room for Matt Carpenter, and then he came back last year and had a big year. So I have to back off of that and hope that these moves that we made, will make the lineup fill out like you said. It does now make sense to have him lead off, like you said, and it does now with Goldschmidt give him the kind of backup that's gonna. We're gonna see how good these other guys are.
Of course, and I wonder how much of an issue it was in terms of a on the field versus front office synergy issue going on. Of course, Mike Matheny, much more old school in his approach, wanting to kind of stick to the old guard of baseball and in the traditional ways of thinking with it, which of course would lend you to the point of having Matt Carpenter bat third a lot, which is what he constantly tried to do.
I've never got to talk to you about this. I'm glad you brought it up. The Matheny school, right? At the time, it didn't upset me as much.
Yeah.
Did I think that Matheny was a great manager? No. But did I think he was the problem? I didn't.
Which is the absolute way you should think about it. It's funny.
But he kind of was. I think it's kind of coming down that he kind of was, because Schultz is a way different guy, and you can see there's a way better clubhouse developing. Do you agree? Absolutely. Just the connection between the players and the manager and Mike Schultz. You hear time and time again, the word that keeps getting used is communication. The way that he is able to communicate his message to the players, and they're clearly on the same page in what they want to do in order to win ball games. So we talk a lot about, these new additions and the new roster and all of that moving forward and what it means for the Cardinals. What does this coaching staff for a full season mean for the Cardinals and the way that they're going to handle business? And something really interesting to kind of see is, we've seen Schultz have a much
shorter hook on some of these guys in terms of production and how long he'll let them go before he decides to make a change.
Matheny would let a guy freaking die out there.
And Dexter Fowler and Matt Bowman are just left to flounder until they absolutely fail. So where do you find that balance? And does Mike Schilt even come in on the opposite end of that, where he'll have a real short hook on a guy like Dexter Fowler, who is getting the nod in right field to start the season, but we'll see how long that continues if his production doesn't live up to what they're expecting.
I don't think that you can have a short hook on Fowler as short as you'd like to.
Of course.
Anytime you get that kind of contract, you are in a position where you're going to get every benefit of the doubt, because Tyler O'Neill starts in right field right out of the gate, and I'm not a huge fan of his, or was not. I honestly, sometimes I fall in love with ball players because they look the part.
Right.
And Tyler O'Neill just looks too kind of buff and you know what I mean?
He reminds you of one of those guys, all those kind of workout warrior type of players just tend to be injured all the time. And that has been an issue for Tyler O'Neill in his career. A lot of nagging injuries going forward with him. And you just see it with some of, especially those bigger outfielder types that corner outfielders just, spending all that time in the weight room. It's tough to maintain that body type and go out and play 162 games compared to any other professional sport. It's much more of a grind.
Who would you, because there's very few players that are buffer than Mike Trout.
Right.
But he stays healthy for the most part.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
He must be doing the yoga, or you know what I mean? Or because his speed. The speed comes from the flexibility, I think, a lot with some of these players. Trout looks like he could play running back in the NFL, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
But he does stay on the field, so, you look at a guy like O'Neill and you wonder, is he too buff? Or, because to me, he doesn't look the part. He doesn't look as smooth a player as I like to see, you know what I mean? I like to see a more fluid player, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And he's a little bit, less fluid, a little more stiff.
Yeah, a little more rigid out there, especially in the field. You can see it.
It's freaking gone, dude. You know what I mean? It's gone.
And that's something that is really kind of interesting to look at moving forward here. The hitting coach for the Cardinals this year, much more of an emphasis on making contact, putting the ball in play. And I think that if Tyler O'Neill buys into that approach and you see him successfully implement those changes that will keep him making more contact, he's the kind of guy that has 40-plus home run power.
For sure. He's got serious power. I think he can definitely put the ball in play more than Dexter Fowler. That's what I'm trying to allude to. What I'm trying to allude to is all you really got to do is hit higher than 180, and you're hitting better than Fowler. Now, I'm not saying he's going to come out of the gates like that, but I was never a big Dexter Fowler fan.
Yeah.
But I saw him injure us a couple times. I mean, beat us when he was with the Cubs.
Yep.
And I was like, damn, I don't remember this guy being that good, but he's sneaky good. So with this new team with more people to count on, he might be a really valuable piece, because the Cubs, 2015, 2016, they had a team full of talent.
Yep.
And he was just kind of a more of a veteran leader.
Yep.
So anything he added was a bonus, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
We need him to be a bonus on this team. We probably shouldn't have paid him $80 million to be a bonus, but he's here, so why not just let him let him play that part? Because if he hits 260 with 15 homers, we're going to be happy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that little bit of power production, I think, is really what the team is going to look at if he is going to maintain his spot, because he's not going to be batting at the top of the order. He's not going to be in the 2 spot. He is going to be expected to drive in some runs there in about the 6th or 7th position in the lineup. And if he doesn't bring that little bit of power potential, now he's mitigating his value to this team in terms of offensive production. And not only that, the thing that really concerns me, and I know a lot of people around baseball with Dexter Fowler, which I know we've heard in spring that some of these things have gotten better, but the physical deterioration with the way that he's played. His top speed in terms of running is down. His range in the outfield is down. His arm hasn't looked as strong. Just those physical traits that kind of round you out as a baseball player. His bread and butter is always going to be getting on base and that offensive production, and I really do think that he will have a bounce back year in terms of that. But when you have a guy like a Tyler O'Neill waiting on the bench,
hard.
how long can you keep someone like that out of a position from helping your team win games?
It is hard to sit somebody like that down. I'm sorry. I'm struggling just thinking about it.
Exactly.
It's hurting me to think that we're going to have to sit through an April where he doesn't get a chance to play, because I think that's probably going to pull about 5 home runs off the board. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe more, considering that how dangerous he's been in the spring so far, and and really how dangerous he was last year. Even for the little time that he was up, he was a pretty dangerous guy.
And then think about the fact that we haven't even mentioned Jose Martinez, who was a top 10 hitter in the National League last year.
He's one of those guys. He's one of those guys like Adams for me. Is that the guy can just rake, okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I get tired of discussing sports based on contracts, and I get tired of talking about baseball based on who's the the veteran and who's the rookie and all this stuff. It's like, can the guy play ball, okay? Martinez, from the day I saw him play, I was like, this guy takes good at bats. I mean, this is like the first time I ever saw him swing the bat in a game. I was like, wow, he takes good at bats.
Yes.
He's battling every time he's up there, and he reaches balls that all over the strike zone, and he can hit them to all fields, and so he's a legitimate 300 hitter.
Absolutely.
I mean, he's not probably going to lead the league in hitting, but he was, top 10 you said last year?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. And I'm saying top 10 in terms of OPS. That's kind of the number that I look at.
The new number.
Right, yes. The new number. Not to get all new school on you here.
I'm going to be talking average and RBIs, and you're going to be like, no, OPS, that's it.
I'm going to hit you with on-base plus slugging.
Whoa,
yeah.
That's so... No, I totally pay attention to OPS. But
yeah, so to actually go old school on you a little bit here, when I think of Jose Martinez, the word that comes to mind is ball player.
Yeah.
This is a guy who gets it, situational baseball. When he comes up with runners on base, he has an approach that fits the timing in the game, the situation down to the very last pitch that he's taking. You can tell that he has an intelligent approach at the plate. You don't hit 300 otherwise.
Yeah.
You have to have that mental aspect to your game. And a lot of what we've seen from Jose Martinez in spring training, he has improved a lot on the defensive end as well. So that's another area. I know that's always kind of the knock on him when we talk about whether he's going to get more at bats or not. He has significantly improved that part of his game, and I wonder how Schilt takes that into consideration.
Well, the guy hit Major League pitching at a 300 clip last year, right?
Right.
Plus knocks him out of the park, 18 home runs, something like that.
And he's a batting champion from back in the minor leagues as well.
He just got his first $1 million contract.
Yeah. Right. How cool was that the team did him that favor with his situation back in Venezuela to redo his
really
contract?
Cool, but I think dollars for dollars, he's worth more than that.
Absolutely.
But they did give him a real professional major league paycheck.
Yes.
For the first time in his career.
Yep.
I believe the guy will go. I think he'll work so hard to improve his fielding, because if he becomes a legitimately strong outfielder, he will make himself a whole lot of money over the next 5-6 years of his life. I mean, he's already up there a little bit, right?
So now he's getting $1 million, I believe, for this next season.
He's pushing like 30, isn't he?
Yeah, so he's 30 years old, I believe. We can look it up here.
So at 30 years old, he is getting his first taste of real major league money, right? So now will he go? Now, he's never managed to improve his fielding up until 30, right? Mm-hmm. So we'll see if he can pull it off. But I think the guy works really hard. So
right,
and I think he takes that money and he's going to work even harder.
I agree completely with you on that point. And we kind of have to put this into perspective. No one's expecting him to turn around and become Alex Gordon or Mike Trout defensively all of a sudden. But just limiting the culpability and just the the amount of risk that you have to put into him being a defensive player on your team, if he can just improve that a little bit, what he brings offensively more than outweighs whatever defensive risk you're going to take. And when you look at it in terms of comparing him and Dexter Fowler, they both have that issue.
Would you go so far to say that O'Neal, Bader, and Martinez? Wait, did I get that right?
O'Neal, Bader, Martinez.
Jose Martinez.
So Ozuna is going to have a spot out there too.
Well, my point is, if you were just going no contracts, those three in the outfield are actually the best three offensive players.
So I would still have to take Ozuna at this point, just from proven track record at the major league level. I was making
a stretch there, but I was just thinking, yes, he does have a better track record, but if you look at his arm problem, shoulder problem, and then you look at the numbers he actually delivered last year, and how much of those numbers were not in clutch situations.
Yes.
Right? This is where the numbers go off, is that I didn't see Ozuna come through in too many really big spots, whereas I saw Martinez come through in huge spots. It's like every at-bat's the same at-bat. Whether you're up by 10 or you're down by 1 in the ninth, he takes the same at-bat every single time, right?
Well, he's out there trying to hit one to the moon, just about every at-bat.
Martinez?
Ozuna.
Ozuna. No, I'm saying Martinez. Martinez takes the same at-bat every time, but Ozuna has it. I felt this way about Matt Holliday as well.
Okay.
That clutch was not his forte. That's what really separated him from Pujols back in the day, right?
Yeah.
Was that Holliday could hit a bomb or he could hit well, but in the clutch he very seldom came through at the same level that Pujols would. I think Martinez is more in the Pujols school of handling clutch situations, and Ozuna is more in the Matt Holliday school of being a little bit afraid or a little bit of ego related to the clutch situation. Does that make sense?
I agree completely with you, and I know this is a point that a lot of numbers people would dispute, that fact that there's no such thing as clutch.
That's why I'm always arguing with you about the numbers, right?
And, you
can't rely on them.
It's just amazing to me that you can look at, for example, a guy that we saw not too long ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, Alan Craig. Anytime he would come up in a situation where he could drive runs in or a clutch moment, he just always produced, and you can sit here and tell me that there's no such thing as clutch till you're blue in the face, but when the same guy keeps getting it done in those situations every single time, there's no coincidence. Like, let's not fool ourselves here. In a game that you play so many games, you have so many at-bats, there's so much data there to then willfully ignore that part of it, but then say that everything else matters is a little bit disingenuous in my opinion.
Well, with Alan Craig, I think that they believed the numbers and then they didn't give him a physical. And then his career was over. So maybe they should have taken a little more of an eye test on the fact that he had a limp when he walked away that last day.
Well, hey, you want to talk about a guy that put his body on the line for the team. I remember in the NLCS, I believe it was, in 2012, he made that slide into home plate, and his foot was never the same since that day. He was already playing hurt, re-injured it, and ever since then, he was just never the same player.
Is that where he jumped over the guy? And then there was the plate collision. Right. That was So he never healed from that?
So he did make it back onto the field, of course, but was just never the same player. The power was never there again. He was a guy that you could count on for about 20 home runs and be up there among the league leader in doubles, and ever since then,
with two outs, there was nobody like him. Literally was like leading the league in RBIs with 2 outs or some number like that.
And another thing I'll say about that guy is that you will never find a guy that had more broken bat singles. I feel like it was just unbelievable the way that he would catch the ball off the end of the bat, break his bat, and just bloop one into left center consistently.
That was his art form, huh?
Yeah. Some people, it's almost like the miss-hit in golf, and it ends up working out for you. He just had that perfected.
Makes me think of like old tapes of Pete Rose. It's like somehow that guy just knew how to get the ball into the outfield between the outfielders and the infielders.
Yeah.
It's like how? Like David Eckstein, if we go back, how in the hell did that guy stay in the league, right? Mm-hmm. He just had a knack for putting the ball where they weren't. You know what I mean? So
that's the name of the game right there.
Yeah, it's weird how players are like that, man. But so what else we got to consider for before opening day?
So again, I kind of want to go back a little something talking about Jose Martinez and if he would become the starting right fielder, how that changes the complexion of the lineup of this team.
So I asked you, and I was admittedly taking a stretch. O'Neill, Bader, Martinez,
and even O'Neill
are the best hitting version of an outfield we could have.
Yes.
Bader. Okay, well, I guess we could have the best hitting if we put somebody like O'Neill or Fowler in center, right?
So I think the best hitting across the board would be if you put O'Neill in center, Ozuna in left, and then Martinez in right.
Right. Do you think? But we lose a lot of defense.
Well, in what Harrison Bader brings you in center field, that's Gold Glove caliber defense at a premium defensive position,
and not a bad offensive player.
Exactly, a guy that's going to give you a little bit of pop. He'll hit you about 15 to 20 home runs, and he's not going to be embarrassing at the plate. You know, you put him in the 8-hole, but that's a guy that can come through and drive you in 2-3 runs every once in a while, you know, and a lot of teams don't have that in their 8 spot.
Okay, we'll get back to your Martinez point, but I had just one question.
Yeah.
Who has a better year offensively this year, Bader or Wong?
Oh, wow, that's a great question.
Who's our 7 and who's our 8? They're probably going to be 7 and 8, right?
Right, exactly.
But who do you think has a better offensive year?
I'm gonna go with Kolten Wong.
Really?
I believe in his ability to make contact a little bit more than Bader, and his power has always been a little bit underrated, in my opinion. Really, the big thing for him has kind of been staying on the field.
Yeah.
You know, and so if
he just hasn't had his bust out year. Last year he was wickedly fantastic defensively.
Yes.
Like the best. I mean, he was the best Cardinal second baseman last year. Since, I don't even know. I mean, Vina might have had a couple years like
I'm trying to think back. You know, Fernando Vina had some excellent defensive years, but I don't think anything like Kolten Wong is given.
I don't think we've ever had a better second baseman that, you know, in my life, you know. But, well, I mean, yeah. So if he could do something offensively, if he could put together like a full, just good year, you know,
right?
That would be great. I mean, just like, you know, 275, 12 homers.
That would be massive for this team, you know. And you would imagine
if he could do 800, no way, right? Could he hit 800?
Yeah, I don't know about that, but
I mean, 750.
Yeah, somewhere in there, you know. It just as long as he's not that huge liability at the end of the order, you know, because
he's streaky.
Looking across some of these other teams, you know, especially just in your own division, you're looking at the Cubs 7-hitter is Wilson Contreras. Now, I know he's been a little up and down, you know, offensively, but a guy with excellent offensive potential. And then look at the Brewers 7-hitter is Mike Moustakas. Okay, so you're talking about very loaded offensive teams in this division that you're trying to keep up with.
Yeah, I didn't know that That's a top-notch bottom of the lineup there.
It's a deep lineup. It's some good offensive teams, and you know that's something that we'll probably touch on a little bit later here. Is just in general across the division, offensively, some really good ball clubs. Of course, maybe one clunker in there with Pittsburgh, and they kind of make up for it with their pitching. You know, so it's all the moves that the Reds made in the offseason. It's a division that, some Cardinal pitchers might not have the numbers that they had last year solely based on what those offenses look like in the division.
I have to admit, I've been concentrating more on the Cardinals' structure, their build, than I have been paying attention to the division. Although I know that there's been some upgrades. I know Milwaukee's going to be tough, and I know the Cubs are going to be tough.
Yep.
The Reds have made some upgrades, but I don't see them climbing out of fourth.
Right,
so
I agree.
We really almost have to pick the Cardinals as second or third at this point.
That's kind of where I'm seeing them. I think the Brewers have earned the right to be the favorite in the division moving into this season, but I think the Cardinals are right there nipping at their heels. And I know a lot of people are down on the Cubs this year, and that was also something I saw. Pacoda projections predict 79 wins for the Cubs this year, and personally, I think that is just utterly disrespectful.
Wow.
I still see them as at least an 87, 88, upper 80s wins team at the very least,
They're saying that because the pitching is diminished?
I would imagine that a lot of that does have to do with projecting aging curves with their pitchers. They've got some old starters.
Lester's got to be going down at some point, right?
Right. Lester's 35. Darvish is 32. Can't ever stay healthy. Cole Hamels is 35. Jose Quintana is 30. And Kyle Hendricks is 29.
That's still a good pitching staff. I'm sorry.
Yes.
That pack right there, even if they're 35 years old, they're fine.
Right, and think about a guy, Kyle Hendricks is 2 years removed from being an NL Cy Young candidate. That's your 5 guy.
That dude's nasty.
Right.
That people don't give him credit, you know what I mean? Because his ball is going every direction, man.
He's nasty in a way that, a lot of people aren't going to pay attention to, like a Jack Flaherty, where he's getting lots of swing and misses, but he's nasty in a way that a Miles Michaelis is nasty, that you just can't get a solid bat on him.
You can't hit him.
Right.
That's the nasty part.
Well, that's the point of pitching. Right?
Yes. He's got a silly sinker.
Yes.
A nasty breaking ball.
Yep. Nice slider to complement it.
And a cut fastball. He really can work it all across the plate.
Yep.
Guys don't know what the hell's coming up there, and that's what makes a good pitcher, to be honest with you.
He's a pitcher, not a thrower.
Yeah, because major league hitters, as it's always said, can hit any fastball, but honestly, what they really can hit is any ball they know's coming.
Yes.
So the minute they got a pitcher locked into where the only thing he's getting swings and misses on is one pitch, they adjust to that one pitch, and then all of a sudden he gets lit up.
You can sit on it, those tendencies and just the amount of tape that gets developed from these people throughout a season.
Gets smoked in the fifth or the third time through, because everybody's like, oh, here comes a changeup. They know by the third time through they lock in on him, and that's why he's 5 innings, and he was having a good year last year, but I'm just saying he's an example of that. He concerns me.
And that's that. Well, I certainly have those same concerns, and another guy that concerns me in that way, Adam Wainwright as well. And Adam Wainwright even more of a concern in my opinion, just from the standpoint that he's not going to get you as many swing and misses as a Michael Wacha will.
You're going to be
right. He's getting older, and he's going to deal with more traffic on the base paths. But he's one of those guys that you count on his veteran savviness to be able to work himself out of those kind of situations and use his acumen much more than his physical abilities compared to some of those other guys to get himself out of those spots. And he proved last year that he can do that.
Yeah.
So we're going to need to see it again from him.
Okay. So I kind of took you off your path there. We're going to talk Martinez, right?
That's where right.
I just had some things I had to ask you about.
Hey, it happens.
See what your opinion was. Okay, so back to your Martinez point.
Yes.
Because what's the outfield going to look like this year?
So we talked about his ability to put the ball in play, be that situational hitter, hit 300. For me, he's your prototypical number 3 hitter. He's the guy that you would slide into that 3 spot. If you put a Jose Martinez into that 3rd spot, now all of a sudden you're looking at sliding a Paul DeJong down to 5th. And quite honestly, I just,
that's a better lineup, man.
Right. When I'm looking at the Cardinals and I see Yadier Molina batting in the 5th spot, there's something that just kind of tells me, we have more than that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think.
And we're not knocking Yadi.
No, not at all.
I mean, not at all. I won't even apologize. I will knock Yadi if I feel like it, okay? but I'm not trying to do that here. What I'm saying is that he is a strong number 6 hitter.
Yes.
Or number 7. Right?
Absolutely.
But at number 5, you're asking too much of him. Even though he's really good, why not have it be he's better, he's the best 6 hitter in the league than have him be a middle pack or lower 5th hitter in the league. You know what I mean?
Well, and not only that, he's the kind of guy that you feel really confident with Yadier Molina coming up with 2 outs and runners
He's
on.
clutch, like we talked about.
Exactly. He's one of those players. So if you can kind of stack him towards the bottom of that lineup, those middle of the order bats are going to be getting on base. And he's going to have a lot of opportunities to drive those guys in. In a 5 spot, that's typically where you see coming up the second inning, you could very well be the leadoff hitter, and he's one of those guys that you see him in those kind of situations, and now he's not as much focused on getting on base because he is a liability on the base pass. He's more of that all or nothing approach where he's trying to jack one out or trying to hit for extra bases.
Well, do you think about a lineup like, 1 through 4 and then 4 through 8 should have a structure like 1 leadoff hitter, 4 cleanup. So your number 5 is your backup cleanup hitter or your second leadoff hitter.
Personally, right? I'm not a huge fan of looking at things through that lens. I would much rather view it from the standpoint of I want to stack my best hitters together and give them the best chance to work with each other hitting the ball well. And that's one of the huge problems that I had with the old school approach with the number 2 hitter, where it's a guy that maybe isn't the greatest hitter, but you kind of looked at it as a guy that could move the guys along the base path or keep the ball in play, And you saw Tony La Russa, one of the first to move away from that theory and put a Carlos Beltran in that 2 spot.
Yes. I noticed that change, but I was saying even if we went the new way, Matt Carpenter, Goldschmidt 1 and 2, right? Then we go Martinez in the 3, like you're projecting. That'd be great. Ozuna in 4, right? So then your number 5 is either a backup cleanup guy to Ozuna, or the inning ended at last and he comes in and he's the next leadoff hitter. Right?
Right.
So you want a guy in the 5 hole that doesn't necessarily need to hit for massive power, but you still want power in the 5 hole because he's the backup. He's the backup cleanup hitter.
You need power in the 5 hole. Yeah, and it's
but
one
he has
of those,
to hit for average too.
Right. So it is one of those spots in the lineup that you're kind of looking for that versatility, as you speak of. You need someone who brings the pop because you're going to be hitting with runners on base. You rally in that first inning.
Person for the 5 hole, that's your point, right?
That's very true. And that's something I talked about moving DeYoung down to the 5 spot. I would not be surprised at all if that scenario came to fruition with Jose Martinez batting 3rd, that you just slot Paul DeYoung down to the cleanup spot, and now Ozuna is your 5 hitter. And it does kind of make sense from the standpoint of wanting somebody to lead off the inning. Ozuna's a guy that you could count on to get on base much more, and I know this sounds kind of weird for a guy that's hit 37 home runs in a season before, but I think Paul DeYoung has more power than Marcell Ozuna does.
I do too.
And that might be a spicy take coming from over here, but
it's not. His style, DeYoung's style lends towards power, even though people don't realize that. He stays back on the ball. He's very seldom flailing. And when he unloads, it goes, right? And it's his style. His approach to hitting is why he's got the power that he's got.
You're absolutely
I think people are surprised because he's not that big of a guy, or he didn't come up with a bunch of this guy's going to be the next power hitter or whatever. But his approach lends to power even more than Ozuna's, because Ozuna, even though he's super strong, he opens up a lot and flails at the ball and takes away his own power.
You made an amazing point talking about the way that DeYoung stays on his back foot. That's a lot of the problem that we've seen with Marcell Ozuna over the past year, is getting out on that front foot and bailing out, losing his base in that back leg, and he's spinning off of the ball. As opposed to, you see a guy like Paul DeYoung, he stays so stable with that back leg and stacks up all of his power so well that he's got a much shorter swing than a Marcell Ozuna, yet the ball just jumps off of his bat.
And I think he looks kind of strange in the fact that he's got heavy legs, right? And so watching a shortstop kind of lumber the way he doesn't seem to fit. You want this quicker guy playing short, right? But when you see him unleash on a fastball, you're like, oh, okay, so his base is strong and he's unleashing it. And then to watch him play short, even though it kind of looks a little odd, He's very good. So I just I like the player is what I'm really leaning to, and I think he does have more pop on a consistent basis than Ozuna does. I think he can easily hit 30 home runs.
And you know, DeYoung is just one of those guys that, especially with the new additions and all the shiny new toys to talk about, he very easily gets left on the back burner, and we kind of forget about what he brings to the table. You want to talk about an exciting, how many players or how many teams in the league would love to have a Paul DeYoung that can bring that amount of offense to a defensive premium position? We talked about Bader in center field, you know, and he brings the defensive part of it. And Paul DeYoung graded out to an above average shortstop last year at the major league level, which is that's a huge thing.
I have to ask you, did you expect that to I mean, did you expect him to falter? Because I kind of did.
I am almost kind of wary of a drop off moving forward.
I thought his defense was going to eventually go. You know, like with the pressure, when you're young and you get your first shot, sometimes you can just ride it.
Yeah.
Like a hot hand, right?
Right.
So you are making the plays, and everybody's like, oh, he's pretty good, you know.
Yep.
But to do it for 162 games, you know, to do it for a full season, you know, he did it last year.
Yeah.
Defensively.
Yeah.
So but I did expect to see more errors last year than I saw. Whoa. And when he makes a play, when he gets into the hole and he comes up with one, I'm like, you know, like I still have like that moment of like, damn, you know, like
exactly.
I didn't expect him to get to that, and he's better. I got to give him credit. He's just better than I thought he was.
A little bit taken back, you know, especially his reputation coming into the league was, well, you know, this guy is going to be able to carry his weight almost anywhere you put him offensively. Yeah. But the question is, can he hold up his shortstop defensively? And we see a lot of times with players that come into the league and they really do flash that glove right away. They're still young. That athleticism is still there. Look at a Manny Machado. When he came up into the league, sensational defender. You know, and he still makes some flashy plays, but when you look at his underlying numbers, you know, he's an above average defensive player, but not nearly that same guy he was at age 20 or 21 when he came up into the league.
Right. DeYoung to me and Bader they are my damn players. You know what I mean? Like they're the players that I'm like, damn, did he just make that play?
Yep.
And then Bader would do things and I'd be like, damn, did he just get to that ball? You know? So I'm really happy with those two guys in the sense that they have surprised me.
Yes.
Their abilities are that is a welcome surprise.
Yes.
Because with the Cardinals over the last 5 years, since our last trip, 2013, 2014, starting in 2015, I've had a lot of diminished expectations. Very seldom have they stepped up and really blew my mind. Like Miles Mikolas blew my mind last year in terms of like, I was like, this guy's just a workhorse. But back to, you know, Bader and DeYoung, those guys, man, they were just like, I enjoyed watching them play, and they did meet and exceed expectation most of the time. So I'm really hoping that we get to see some more of that.
Right, and you said it perfectly with the kind of moving forward after that 13-14 season of just expectations kind of lowering from season after season. You know, you started to see the diminishing results year after year. It was kind of one less round in the playoffs, few less wins.
People would take this wrong, but I'm going to call it the Jedd Gyorko effect. Okay, when you start thinking of Jedd Gyorko as your power bat, and you're in trouble. Not that he's not a good player. He's a very good player, and he can be a starter in the league, and he could be a starter on this team. But when you're relying on him as your, you know, clutch bat, you're in trouble. In you know, in El Central, you are screwed, man.
Exactly.
So you know, we don't want to live in the Jedd Gyorko world. That's what we want. Real talent coming up. And we want veterans that can deliver, and no more of this wishing and hoping and rubbing things together to hope it works, you know?
Well, and that
leads to an 85-win season.
Right, exactly. And that was kind of the issue when you look back at that maybe 5-year run after that 2011 World Series, where the team just kind of progressively got worse and worse, where you saw there weren't those position position player prospects that were coming up and being productive at the level that we were used to seeing. The last time the Cardinals made that run to the World Series in 2011, think about guys coming up like a David Freese, like an Alan Craig, and I'm sure I'm forgetting a bunch of other names too, but there were some bats that were coming up through the system that you could rely on moving forward, and just to supplement the lineup in that way, kind of how we talked about with Goldschmidt fitting in there and making everyone else's job easier as a result. Those young guys are those unexpected surprises that really can give a huge boost to your squad.
Well, I mean, we look back at that team. Obviously, we had Albert Pujols, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so like, I don't know how many times we're going to discuss this, but he's no longer a Cardinal, right? So you had your Freeze, you had your guys like that, that could fill out this lineup, right? But we found ourselves over the last few years treating David Freese, which is a Jedd Gyorko in terms of at bat, in terms of as a hitter, they're pretty equivalent in a certain way, right?
I would agree.
You cannot bank on guys like that. You cannot bank on David Freese as your main go-to guy. You can let him hit sixth, right?
And exactly. That's why that team was so good. You had a David Freese in the sixth spot,
right?
And that was back when he was hitting 300 and jacking you 20 bombs a year too.
Yeah.
You got to think sometimes with these, especially the older position players that come up at a later age, it's a short window of production that you're looking at, and quickly it's going to drop off. And that's typically how it goes with the more mediocre players. Of course, the really talented superstar players, they stay better later throughout their career. Like a Matt Holliday was able to keep his production up until about age 37, where you started to see a pretty significant drop off. So that's something that we're also looking at. These position players coming up for the Cardinals, they aren't those type of older position players other than a Jose Martinez, and no one considered him a prospect anyway, but a Paul DeJong, very young guy that looks like he has a bright, lengthy future ahead of him, along with also maybe a Tyler O'Neill, those type of guys.
Bader,
yeah.
Even Wong's still a young guy, So it's like we could have a nice young core that really has upside, as opposed to trying to force somebody to have upside that just doesn't have it. You know what I mean? So that's a positive. So should we talk pitching now? What do we got?
I think we have to. I mean, it's pretty amazing we've gotten this far and haven't dove into the pitching really deep at this point.
We got a whole season, so we're excited. There's so much to discuss and be both pissed off about and happy about.
Yeah.
Like, that's the greatest thing about spring,
Well, it really is, and they say
I get to spend either a whole 6 months being pissed or a whole 6 months being happy, or we'll see how it all
exactly. Or it could turn out like the Blues season, where you could be pissed for a half a season and then super excited the second half, which is kind of how the Cardinals season was last year.
The Blues season, I forgot they were here because I was just like, this team sucks.
And now they're one of the most entertaining teams to watch in the game.
I watched them the other night and I couldn't turn it off. Literally turned on the game just to catch a little bit, see what was going on, and just kept watching until it was over. And I hadn't done that with the Blues games too much this year. I watched some and disappointed, flipped over to something else. You know what I mean? And then this last few weeks, last month or so, and maybe I'm a bandwagon jumper because I'm hearing good things, but that's not the case. I literally started watching and getting excited, and then it actually started to snowball. So
it's like any other audience member. When you put on a good product, you're going to want to watch, and if the team is consistently losing all the time, well, there's not too much incentive to watch, but before we get into the pitching and everything, let's just take a second to think, how much fun is it to be a St. Louis sports fan right now with everything going on with the Blues?
Are we going to get into AAF football team?
Oh my gosh, yeah, we'll get into XFL, all of it.
No. Let's not get that far off track. It is fun to be a Blues fan right now.
Soccer team coming into town.
That's cool. That's real cool.
But no, just it's going to be always a Blues in Cardinals town at heart. Right. And when both of those teams are going at the same time, again, like I said, I can't remember.
You're not upset that the St. Louis Rams lost the Super Bowl?
Oh man, the St. Louis Rams, huh? The LA Rams.
Well, if they'd have won the Super Bowl, then I would have. I don't know what I would have called them. But since they lost, I enjoy calling them just like mocking them. Basically.
See, as someone who isn't originally from the St. Louis area, it's easier for me to take a step back, and I don't necessarily have an NFL team. Boy, that is a fun team to watch.
You like the Rams?
Oh, they're entertaining. What they got going on the offensive end.
I'm gonna block the microphone and say this. Okay? I really like them too. They're really good. And I hated enjoying watching them play. And don't tell anybody listening.
It's like your side piece. You can't let anyone know about it. But
side piece.
But at the end of the day, you're glued to the TV over there watching them.
You're kind of in love with them.
You can't say no.
Yeah.
I mean,
and it's just like, and I hate getting manipulated. And I feel like they manipulated this town and took all the good parts of the Rams out to LA and then actually spent money on them and actually developed the talent and got them to the point, where they were that good. Mm-hmm. I think they could have done that here, but they knew they wanted to move,
And, I try to separate it because that's a Stan Kroenke thing as opposed to a team and players type thing.
Yeah.
And, just as I love football so much, probably my favorite sport to watch, There's just nothing like watching, in my opinion, what was a very complete team in that LA Rams team, and just the way that their whole team worked together. You look at the special teams, to the defense, to the offense. But anyway, that's all beside the point. You love them.
And you know what my favorite sport to watch is?
What's that?
Baseball.
Yes.
Baseball is my favorite sport to watch.
There you go.
I am excited, very excited about this coming season, and mostly because I think that we're going to see a product that is far better than what we've seen in the last few years.
Yep.
Right. So let's get into the pitching a little bit. Who's our starting pitchers this year, and what can we expect to see?
So starters, you're looking at Miles Michaelis, Jack Flaherty, Dakota Hudson, Michael Wacha, and Adam Wainwright.
Did you already put them in order based on what you think are?
I think that's how it's going to shake out, but you never know. Wainwright gets the nod and ends up in the 3 spot in the rotation. You never totally know how they're going to handle that. I think this is
a swan song. I'm just going to say it. I think this is a swan song. I think that if he goes 12-10 with a 4.2 ERA,
that would be excellent.
That would be excellent. And
yes.
So that's all I'm hoping out of him. But that's a number 4, number 5 starter if you're a playoff team. So I think he's going to be down the list. It's just whether Hudson can carry the load. I like his stuff. I think he could be very good.
I think people are going to be.
I'm surprised you're putting Wacha behind Hudson. You know what I mean? In your list.
I think you're surprised now. I think 1 month into the season, people are going to be wondering, wow, is Dakota Hudson or Jack Flaherty the most talented pitcher on this staff? And let me tell you a reason why I think Dakota Hudson is even more cut out to be an ace than Jack Flaherty is. Dakota Hudson has no injury history, really, to speak of in his career.
Right.
He's ready for the innings workload. You're talking about a guy who has pitched 150 innings plus in the minor leagues the last 2 seasons, and not only that, won minor league pitcher of the year at both of those stops. The most recent being in the PCL, the higher level, and he's one of those guys that people might not rank him as high on the prospect list due to his physical traits and maybe his stuff compared to a Jack Flaherty or an Alex Reyes.
I like his stuff.
This is a guy that has proven with his production that he is a guy that is ready to come in and give you results, which at the end of the day, that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, he knows how to get people out. I mean, and that's what pitching really is. It's getting people out. And so all the stuff and all the 100-mile-an-hour fastballs, whatever.
Which we're still talking about a guy that throws a 97-mile-an-hour power sinker.
Yeah, so, I mean, how is that not good enough stuff? That's totally good enough stuff. And I think that's why I like the conversation we're having, or having a conversation in this forum, because people would give the veteran the the chance before. So people would generally go down and say Waka would be ahead of him.
Right. They'll give him the benefit of the doubt. They've been there and done it.
Yeah, and I think that with Waka, if we're really honest, he has not pitched well in a long time. Like really, really well. Like he's had good games, he's had good stretches, but he's been injured and he's had trouble getting through the lineup the third time through. So to say that he's in any way a dominant starter or to expect that kind of dominance,
he's just not the same guy he was when he was younger and when he came up. And really, all I see in terms of that is durability, and you've already talked about how he kind of flames out that third time through the lineup, and you can even bring that onto a macro scale even more. He starts the season out really strong, you know, and he'll give you a great April, a great May, even pretty good moving forward past that into June a little bit. But then about the time you hit the All-Star break, either he's on the shelf with an injury or he's just breaking down physically and can't pitch to the same level that he could earlier in the season. And again, Adam Wainwright's a guy that I worry about with that as well. But luckily we're talking about a team that has all kinds of pitching depth down in the minor leagues to kind of reload that gun and go from there wherever they need to. Yes, Ponce de Leon, Gomber, even a guy like a Ryan Helsley who is cut out for a bullpen role right now.
But he
could be a starter.
Have you ever seen footage of him pitch? Or
yes, I've watched him in spring training, and I know everyone was really high on him last year as well before he got injured.
Yeah, because he throws like 160, right? I mean, like.
So just like everyone else, you know.
Yeah. I mean, that is the new reality. But he does hit 100, doesn't he?
I don't know if he hits 100, but I know he's up there in the high 90s, 96, 97, 98, in that range. And you know, he's one of those guys that, you know, if you're talking about, you know, a John Brebbia, a John Gant, and a Mike Myers who are out of options to send down to the minor leagues, if you don't have that kind of situation, I think Ryan Helsley is in that bullpen to start the year, and he's one of those kind of hybrid guys you could use like a Ponce de Leon, where if you need him to start, make a spot start, he has the ability to do that or give you multiple innings out of a pen.
So it's another one of those contract veteran things where
again,
we end up with guys that are getting a chance just because we owe them money, you know what I mean?
Well, you know, and it's interesting. I've been thinking more about this where, you know, you think, well, what the hell are we doing? Why aren't we putting the best team out there to win ball games at all times, you know? And you have to think, just look at the amount of injuries that teams go through throughout the season. Even if some of those higher paid guys aren't necessarily great options, having that depth and having that flexibility with your roster, now that means you can make trades that you otherwise wouldn't be able to make in order to improve your roster. Now it means you don't have a fallback guy. Say you need those innings or you need somebody to go out there and fill that fourth outfielder spot.
I think we'll end up needing all of them. You know
exactly.
what I mean? Before it's all said and done, we'll need them all because there's gonna be guys faltering, and
always.
You know, you're gonna have. I mean, the opportunity to be able to ship guys down and ship them back up. But like you said, we got three guys that are kind of out of options. Were you surprised they got rid of Shreve? Just like,
you know, I was, from the standpoint of trying to keep more lefties on the roster, this is something that I wanted to kind of get into and talk about. When you look at the bullpen, it's nothing but right-handers except for Andrew Miller, and he's not a lefty specialist type of guy. He's the kind of guy that you put out there and expect, okay, here's the seventh inning in the middle of their order is coming up. I'm going to put Andrew Miller out there to dominate their best hitters, whether they be right-handed batters or left-handed batters. I think that's the role he's going to serve. He's not going to be tied down to an eighth inning, seventh inning, sixth inning role. He is going to be situational, where are you in the lineup type of guy when you send him out there. So,
okay. Well, what about the bullpen?
So, I'm very intrigued by a guy like Dominic Leone. Of course, Jordan Hicks, we know about the electric 105-mile-per-hour fastball, literally the hardest thrower in the world right now.
So you think he's closer?
Plays for the Cardinals. I think Jordan Hicks is going to get the majority of chances to start the season.
Do you think they'll come right out of the gate, ninth inning, here's the ball? Or do you think they go to Miller? Or?
I think it'll be a situational thing because, again, Jordan Hicks is going to be one of those guys that say you need an inning and a third out of the bullpen. Hicks can fill that role for you. You could put a Mike Myers out there. You could put a John Gant out there to do that type of thing, but they're not the type of dominant pitchers that a Jordan Hicks is, you know? So I think just from the standpoint of maybe wanting to utilize him in that role, he might not strictly be the closer. And you see a lot of teams in baseball now going to the closer by committee approach, and I wonder if between Dominic Leone and Jordan Hicks, that could be the type of situation that we see. And you know, it's one of those things where nobody's really seen a lot of Dominic Leone, and when we did see him, he is ailing physically.
Right.
So I think people are going to be very surprised when they see how effective Dominic Leone is and how valuable a piece he's going to be to this bullpen.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see because honestly, I you know, the times I saw him, he just wasn't around much. You know? So I wasn't expecting as much as I think you sound like you're expecting out of him.
Yeah, I think Dominic Leone is going to be a huge piece come the end of the season, and kind of along that role of talking about really the place where I think the Cardinals have improved the most this year as opposed to last year in terms of depth. Looking at their bench and position players on their bench, this team is set up in a way that they are 3 deep at every position this year, as opposed to when you looked at last year, it was kind of more of a 2 deep setup. And then the minute that you had that injury at whatever position it might be, you're looking at slotting a guy in that isn't a huge downgrade, but now that 4th guy that has to come in and give someone an off day, or in the outfield a 4th guy, or that 5th person in the infield that has to come in and give that replacement an off day. You looked at a really diminished level of talent in player that you were sliding into that role. Whereas opposed, you look at this year, now you're looking at Tyler O'Neill is that 5th outfielder. Now you're looking at a Drew Robinson as the backup infielder who is, you know, I know a lot of fans are not excited about what he's going to bring offensively, but he fits the role that he has on this team. You already have a Yairo Munoz who you can stick in there and give you a little bit of offensive production and still fill that utility role in the infield. But now you've got that guy that, say you got a 1-run lead late in the game, I would rather see Drew Robinson filling in at shortstop as opposed to a Yairo Munoz, you know, where he can preserve that lead and give you the defensive upgrade when you're in a close ball game late.
I agree. I agree. I mean, I do like their bench better going forward. I do like their bullpen better going forward. I do like Goldschmidt going forward. So I think we're going to have to pick this up next episode, right?
You're right.
But as far as being hopeful, I think we've got it all there. Our hope, if you can hear us out there, our hope is real. We have real hope for this team. As we start this season, we have real hope, and I think this team deserves to be treated with hope, right?
Absolutely. This team should be, again, I haven't been this excited about a Cardinals team coming into the season since post-2011 World Series champs. You know, it's one of those situations where, you know, there's been a lot of clamoring from the fans of, oh, the Cardinals aren't making all the moves that they need to be making. Well, if you find a way to complain about this offseason, then bless your heart, because there's not a whole lot more you can do.
Cardinals fans will find a reason to.
Oh yeah, should have had Harper, should have had Machado.
Oh my God, this town will bitch about everything. We want to make sure that everybody knows out there that this season we'll be talking a lot of baseball, obviously, but we'll be bringing in guests. We'll be doing some segments about Cardinals past, Cardinals future, and we hope that you guys will tune in. Colin, what do you have to say on the way out of this first episode?
I just want to say thank you for inviting me onto this podcast with you, and just judging from this first episode, I think we're going to have a lot of fun this year.
Well, thank you for tuning in to the first episode ever of the Birds on a Wire podcast. Be sure to check us out soon, as our next episode will be out next week, and you can find us on YouTube at the Phantom Mentor channel.